What is this? We're on.
Hey, welcome to ROM Biodiversity's Google Hangout. One of many, many Google Hangouts we've done here from the bowels of the ROM. Today, we're in the office of my friend and colleague, Mark Peck. Quite a neat office, Mark.
It's a little messy right now, Dave. It's a little busy right now, yeah.
It's very crap. I'm sitting in front of about, I don't know, a dozen passenger pigeons. Just to give you some context, there's all these notes on the board that say, Mark, do this, Mark, do that. It looks like a curator's office, indeed. Exciting to be here. So let me give you everybody a little bit of context on what we're talking about today and how the next 25 minutes or so is going to flow. My name is Dave Ireland. I'm the Managing Director of the Center for Biodiversity here at the ROM. My role, in a nutshell, is to help connect the back of house, our research scientists, our curators, our technicians, our collections, to the front of house, those folks who are interested in interacting with our public, and students and children and adults and all different audiences. And so my job is very fun, but I sit in the middle trying to connect those two worlds as best I can. One way we're doing that is through the centennial year here at the ROM. The ROM, as you know, is turned 100 on March 19th, 2014. So we're celebrating our 100-year anniversary over the course of 12 months, doing a variety of different things. All sorts of cool things happening at the ROM, from world cultures to ancient cultures to fossils. In biodiversity, we are focusing a little bit on the passenger pigeon. For obvious reasons. The passenger pigeon went extinct the year we opened. So Mark curated a beautiful exhibition here at the ROM. It opened on August the 23rd and is open till April 12th. And we've brought out a bunch of our own passenger pigeons. Mark will certainly speak to this a little bit later. Come to the ROM and see it. But we've also got a series of very rich programs to celebrate the passenger pigeon, to celebrate biodiversity, and to really start to investigate the idea of extinction, what it means, and interestingly enough, we've got a great person who can help us talk about de-extinction today. So on that note, let me just, before I introduce our two key players here, and they're going to do most of the talking, I just want to let you know how you can get involved. We've got several viewers online right now. You can certainly watch the cast live via your Google Plus Hangout. You can go to the ROM's homepage and watch via YouTube or watch via the ROM's website. You can ask questions in many different ways. I like Twitter. Twitter's easy. Ask ROM, hashtag AskROM, hashtag ROMPP, or just send them directly to @ROMBiodiversity. Our buddy Ryan Dodge, who's in the background and the master of all Google Plus Hangouts and social media, is here to help us. So he'll get those questions. He'll get them to Mark, Ben, and I, and we'll help answer them. So without further ado, I'm not the star of this show. I'm just the mediator. Who we have beside me is Mark Peck. He is the ornithology technician here at the Royal Ontario Museum, and I'll let him further introduce himself in a second. And then we have over in sunny California, Mr. Ben Novak, the man who is planning on de-extincting the passenger pigeon. Hi, Ben.
Hello there.
So why don't we start with Mark. Mark, give us a little bit of an introduction of yourself, what the passenger pigeon means to you, and then maybe segue into an introduction of Ben.
Right, so the passenger pigeon to me started probably when I was 10 years old. I used to come to the museum, and the museum had a diorama up that had been up since 1935 of passenger pigeons. Passenger pigeons, as many of you know, went extinct in 1914. They were a beautiful red brick breast bird on the males, about 1.5 times the size of a mourning dove, or a similar size of a rock pigeon, but a little bit more streamlined. And sadly, it was the first bird I realized that I was never going to get a chance to see again. It was, at the time, the phrase that went out was always, "Extinction is forever." And up until about 2 years ago, I think that phrase was probably true. And then when we started planning this intervention or exhibit that we were doing at the ROM, both to celebrate the 100-year anniversary of the ROM and the 100-year memorial of the extinction of the passenger pigeon, serendipitously, we had a group of researchers from the University of California, Santa Cruz, who were interested in looking at our passenger pigeons, taking a small sample from the toe pad of the bird, and then doing some molecular research on that. And Ben Novak was part of that team, and is probably heading up one of the more exciting programs in natural history, science, and research today. And certainly not without controversy, but the science behind it, to the point where de-extinction or extinction may not be forever, is a monumental thought process for most of us to try and get around. So that's probably the best introduction I can say or give to Ben. Ben is from Hamilton originally, and I'm really excited. Being from Toronto, there's a lot of competition between Hamilton and Toronto birders, so this is kind of the fun part. Ben is sort of heading up the program to bring back the passenger pigeon through de-extinction, and I'll let Ben explain that to you a little further.
Awesome.
All right. Well, that's my big cue, huh? So, yeah, a few years ago, I was studying in Hamilton, Ontario, and I really wanted to get my hands on some passenger pigeon specimens. I was interested in studying their ecology at the time. There are still big questions about the bird's ecology and their history that have large bearing on how they go extinct. I mean, we know that human-caused changes in harvesting, deforestation are what caused the extinction of the passenger pigeon, but we don't really know how human beings affected such a giant population, the flocks of billions, and that captured my curiosity intensely. When I was younger, and I first learned about the birds, similar to Mark when I was a kid, I had this grand idea that the future of conservation would be to bring these extinct species back to life. And in the midst of starting my passenger pigeon work, a group called Revive and Restore, founded by Ryan Phelan and Stuart Brand of the Long Now Foundation, had come together to make that reality. The technology had actually come in place. So what I thought was going to be something happening maybe toward the end of my life, because I'm optimistic about innovation, is happening now, and I had to get on board. So I called up, and we started. And the first step for recreating any extinct species is getting DNA. And so that's actually a big reason why I'm talking here with Mark and everyone at the ROM. The majority of the specimens that we're working with in our study come from the Royal Ontario Museum, which has the largest collection of passenger pigeons in the world. And we're getting some great DNA results out of those. Actually, the last week has been really exciting. We're finally unlocking a few secrets, which passenger pigeons prove not to give up easily. And there's a grand process to de-extinction, and before I kind of go into that, feel free to kind of direct me with any questions.
Yeah, Ben, that is a great introduction, and I think we've set the stage for a neat sort of 15-minute. I think we've got about another 15 minutes to chat, so this is perfect. So at this point, I do want to just make a quick announcement that we're bringing Ben to Toronto on Friday night. We have got a really remarkable evening planned for Friday night. We're calling it De-Extinction Dialogue. You can go to the ROM website to get a ticket anytime. And I'm just going to give you a quick sort of overview of what this evening is going to be like. Mark and I met an artist. Well, Mark is very good friends with an artist, Sarah Angelucci. He introduced me to Sarah. We saw her performance at the AGO, and we're bringing her performance to kickstart the evening off at the ROM. I don't want to give it away too much, but if you're in the Royal Ontario Museum on Friday night at 6 o'clock, come to the Rotunda area near Queen's Park, and you're going to experience something like you've never seen before. Her art performance will precede a double lecture. First will be Joel Greenberg, who is arguably one of the world's authority on passenger pigeon, has just written a wonderful book, and he'll give a 20-minute talk on his book and some of the natural history of the bird. And then Ben, of course, will take the stage as our final keynote and provide a very interactive and engaging sort of TEDx-style talk on his work with the Revive and Restore project on the de-extinction concept. So that's Friday, September 26th. You can get your tickets on the ROM website. So at this point, I'm going to just throw it back to you guys with a question that I think has been coming through Twitter quite a lot over the last couple weeks, and it's certainly something I'm thinking about. What is it about de-extinction that seems to be capturing the public attention? I mean, is this, and I'm going to play the devil's advocate here a little bit. Are we providing sort of a conduit in for public interest through a gimmick, or is this for real?
I'm gonna hand this over to Ben to start and get his viewpoint on this. It's certainly a very controversial discussion to have, but let's let Ben get it started off.
This is definitely for real. We announced that we were doing these types of projects in early 2013 with the TEDx De-Extinction event. All of those lectures can be found online. And there are several de-extinction projects up and going at the moment. We have a de-extinction kind of community of scientists around the world, which is growing with conservationists, molecular biologists, developmental biologists, bioethicists, conservation legal researchers. I mean, you name it, there's someone from the field involved in these conversations. And we wanted, through Revive and Restore, we wanted this type of scientific endeavor to be not something that's happening behind some closed-off curtain and then we reveal it to the world and the world gets to deal with it then. We wanted this to be an engaging moment for the future generations where the entire public can weigh in, they can start talking, and they can be part of making the decisions that drive this research. And the public's questions have certainly been a major point in producing how we're designing this research. We had a lot of considerations at the beginning about ethics and animal welfare and what this really means, what the end goal is. You know, is this a gimmick to put an animal in a zoo? Is it just to get people talking about conservation-oriented problems again? Is it a research project to figure out genomes? And our goal is to revive the passenger pigeon and restore it to its ecological function in the wild. This is a 100% conservation-motivated project. We are involved with a mammoth project that is also conservation-oriented. And to give an update on how real this is, George Church's team at Harvard has now introduced 15 mammoth or mammoth-like mutations into elephant cells, and they are researching how those affect the expression of traits within those cells in a petri dish. So this is a early de-extinction in a petri dish, and while we over here in California are working on passenger pigeon genomes, the Michael Archer's team is cloning material from the gastric brooding frog. The Bucardo project in Spain has started back up after 10 years of having no funding to bring back the Bucardo from frozen cells. And there are several backbreeding projects around the world, notoriously the Aurochs project, the Urus project, and the Quagga project of South Africa, which has actually been going on since 1987.
That's incredible. Before I hand it over to Mark, I just circled one point, the mammoth. You guys have, if I'm interpreting this, I'm not a geneticist and I'm not nearly a deeply rooted biologist anymore. I'm an administrator. But what I heard was there are mammoth genes in a petri dish and you guys are studying them to potentially include in a living elephant's genome.
So in a petri dish, right now, as we speak, there are African elephant cells, living cells, called fibroblasts. And already inside of those cells are mammoth genes.
Wow.
Wow. Okay, incredible. Mark, what's your take on this whole concept from a very big picture? Are we going down the right road? Are we spending our money the most effective way we possibly can? Is this a gimmick, or is this a true conservation tool in your mind?
No, I think it can be an incredibly strong conservation tool. Yeah, there's a lot of ethical considerations to think about, but the science of actually being able to bring extinct species back is an incredible thought process to go through.
Yeah.
Down the road, how you introduce those into the wild, that's another conservation, question to be answered. But the idea of having some of our mistakes corrected environmentally, all other things being equal, yeah, how could you not be excited by that? And I think what Ben and Revive and Restore are doing, that's phenomenal opportunities for future generations. So yeah, why wouldn't you at least say, how do we do this?
Yeah.
Can we do this?
Yeah.
What are the problems doing it? It's really exciting stuff.
Yeah.
There's no way around it.
Well, I remember, Ben, and I think Mark might have been there, but I was at a meeting in the ROM internally where I brought in the cover of a National Geographic. I think there was a pigeon on it, a mammoth, and this, that, and the other thing, and it was really the first time that the story hit the press. There it is.
There it is.
That's the one. Anyway, I brought that magazine into a high-level managers meeting here at the ROM, and I said, holy cow, these guys are doing this. We got to bring somebody in and talk about it. And you should have heard the controversy that ensued around here, just internally. Oh, we shouldn't be looking into this, or we shouldn't be in great. But it created such a conversation that the result was, well, let's bring someone in to hear about it. So really exciting stuff. And for our viewers out there, again, we've got Ben Novak from California with the Revive and the Restore project, who is literally making real the de-extinction of species, with a particular emphasis on the passenger pigeon. We got Mark Peck beside me here, our ornithologist here at the ROM, who again manages the largest collection of passenger pigeons in the world. We're live on air right now. You can ask questions through Twitter, through your Google feed, through the YouTube. So please do. We're getting a few coming in, and I'll push those forward. We've just heard about the reality of it. We've heard about some of the ethics behind it. I'd like to turn now just to some of your thoughts, Ben, on next steps. Let's say that we do de-extinct the passenger pigeon, and you end up with a small flock. What would be, from an ecological point of view, the next steps in terms of policy, in terms of reintroduction? I mean, I've worked with black-footed ferrets and marmots, and I know that the processes for reintroducing captive bred animals has its own series of trials and tribulations. Maybe just speak to the ecological point 10, 20 years down the road.
All right. Well, before I go into that, you got me distracted for just 1 second. You mentioned black-footed ferrets, and I know that a lot of people are wondering, how we're going to bring this technology and this type of work into helping endangered species. And I will point out that Revive and Restore, through a collaborative effort with the San Diego Zoo and Cofactor Genomics, has produced the world's first black-footed ferret genome sequences just in the past 2 months. And that is to aid kind of the study and genetic rescue of that population. There are tons of ways in which this helps endangered species. But going back to your question about, okay, 10 years, 15 years down the road, the stuffed passenger pigeon that you brought out is now flapping around in the forest. What happens? Well, that's going to be interesting. In my TEDx talk, I gave a grandiose scheme about painting or dyeing rock pigeons to train birds how to move from one area to another. And that's all very interesting, maybe not necessary, maybe it will be. But, people have done some very very abstract things in reestablishing birds, from the planes that are painted like whooping cranes to teach them how to migrate. There's a whole behavioral element that matters at the point of having birds, but there's also the major political element of where can you release these birds, where do you release these birds, and these are a heavily nomadic bird. So this is an interstate issue in the United States, and it's an international issue when we take into account that we cannot prevent these birds from flying to Ontario, where they used to fly, or Quebec, or Manitoba. Luckily for the passenger pigeon, we're only dealing with Canada and the United States, and so far our countries have been rather peaceful on these terms in some respects. But I'm really looking for whatever partners are willing to begin thinking about passenger pigeons in the wild. We have an interesting situation for passenger pigeons. A lot of people say the habitat is gone and it's changed and it's different. And this view is incorrect. The reality of the passenger pigeon is it's been around for several million years. We actually just got DNA data back yesterday that really proves that point. This species has been what it is for a very long time. That's through ice ages and drastic forest changes. That's from forests dominated by pine trees to complete forests dominated by oak. Regime changes, this bird lives through them. The idea that forests are different now and now unsuitable to passenger pigeons is in complete violation of what this bird is. The fact of the matter is that at present, in the eastern United States, there are more acres of forest now than there were in 1890. This is a rare opportunity for an environment in which we have more habitat rather than less. We're gaining it rather than losing it. And that's a habitat that can benefit from having its old levels of biodiversity back. And one crucial element of that biodiversity was a arboreal wood pigeon, the passenger pigeon. What the passenger pigeon does is it eats nuts, seeds, berries, consumes them, flies 500 miles away and deposits that nutrient somewhere else. It's a dynamic part of an ecosystem, and in the large flocks, it was really acting like a superorganism, like a member of the megafauna of the Pleistocene and prior. It's really affecting forest structure in these large flocks. People get scared of the idea of large flocks, but the idea of a large flock for the future is not necessarily what they were in the past. So in the 1860s, over Toronto, a flock of maybe 2 to 3 billion passenger pigeons was observed, flying overhead for hours upon hours. The forest today might not sustain 2 to 3 billion passenger pigeons. We're trying to calculate those numbers right now, and as we form this, maybe 1 billion, maybe a little more. What does that really mean for people? Well, they're not going to necessarily see a lot of pigeons in one spot all the time, and they're not necessarily going to see them often. What we really care about is getting the birds flocking densely so that even just a few thousand birds are playing the type of disruptive, nomadic role that they did. This is the kind of thing that will put competition on mice, deer, squirrels, blue jays, the type of competition that aids the other animals that they compete with peripherally, allowing biodiversity to kind of balance out and become enriched.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Ben. And one of the main messages of the Shad Gallery of Biodiversity here at the museum is the interconnectivity of life and living systems. And it's a really hard topic to get across to some younger people, and indeed most of our audiences. They understand that life is in crisis, indeed biodiversity is in crisis. They get that message. They also get the message that life is important, and that's somewhat obvious. But that middle message that everything interacts with everything else, and those interactions are as important to life as life itself, is a harder one to get across. Just with our last few minutes, I kind of wanted to turn over to Mark, because another aspect of our initiative here at the ROM, with the passenger pigeon exhibition and with the celebration over the course of the next year about ROM biodiversity and the ROM itself, is extinction. So our exhibit is twofold. One side of the exhibit focuses on 10 restored passenger pigeons, a beautiful diorama that Mark and the team restored, and it really gives a sense of what that system looked like. Right across from it are 11 endangered and extinct birds, some of which are from Ontario. And the data on that exhibit is pretty clear and in layman's terms, but basically, you know, birds across the globe are in trouble right now. 1 in 8 apparently are in trouble. So, Mark, can you just speak a little bit about the plight of birds globally? What can people do both locally and globally to help this, and give us some sort of, you know, hope? Give us the reality of the situation, and then give us a bit of hope at the end.
Right. So, if you've looked at recent studies, you'll notice that almost most populations of birds, maybe with the exception of raptors and waterfowl, are declining precipitously, and some of that's due to habitat loss, some of it's due to migration pressures, some to pesticide and herbicide use, and some of it may even be directly related to overhunting, as it was with the passenger pigeon. We can do more, and we probably now, and this is a perfect example of the de-extinction, is we have the tools to do more than we've ever had before. We've got citizen science programs like eBird Canada or eBird in the United States, Project Nest Watch, breeding bird surveys. All of these are very accessible to not only professional biologists but to amateurs as well, that allow people to engage, understand, and contribute to science. The same way that our passenger pigeon that was collected back in 1871 at Tannery Hill, which is essentially Yorkdale, Toronto, and a small piece of towpad skin from that bird was all that Ben and the crew from Revive and Restore needed to get started on the de-extinction process. It didn't take much, and we've got the tools to do it. So I think if we care enough, and obviously there's people like Revive and Restore, and museums and environmentalists and Bird Studies Canada and Cornell, that are all willing to do whatever they can to make this a reality, we can do a lot better than we've done in the past. So I'm excited about the opportunities that, and the conversations that this is starting to bring up. Like, you know, yeah, there's concerns about where is all the funding going to go? Is it all going to go to genomic sequencing from endangered species? It doesn't have to be that way at all. If governments are thinking, we can do both, and we can do it very successfully, and one can just complement the other. So I think it's a great opportunity, and I think getting it out into an area where people start discussing these things and say, yeah, we can do more, let's get excited about it, and look how cool this stuff is. So I'm behind this 100%.
Awesome. So we just have 3 minutes left, and I want to give Ben a chance to have a bit of a last word. But just to follow up on Mark's enthusiasm and passion, and something that he forgot to say, and he's being too modest. Mark was at the head of building a large-scale relationship with Bird Studies Canada between the Royal Ontario Museum and BSC. We now host a staff member from BSC here in the museum. Emily Rondell is in charge of a lot of these citizen science programs. You can go to the BSC website, you can go to the ROM website. She's in charge of some great programs that allow you, whether you know birds or not, to fully get involved, and you're helping scientists conserve nature. So certainly look into that, and I'm a huge fan of that approach. But I'm also super intrigued by innovation in science, and exciting to see what's happening with Ben and his team. So Ben, we just have about a minute left. I definitely want to leave the last word with you. To all our viewers out there, thanks so much for watching, and don't forget, September 26th, this Friday night, we're going to have a program that's going to blow you away. From art to science to and Ben being here physically in the house, we're really excited to have him. So please go to the website. Tickets are, there are limited numbers, so go check it out as soon as you can, and hope to see you here. But let's end our hangout today with a word from Ben Novak over in California with the Revive and the Restore project on his work with the passenger pigeon and others.
Well, what I'll end on is we're approaching a very different world for conservation, and as Mark pointed out, I feel this is really exciting, and there are examples where the merger of biotechnology and how we use it in nature are absolutely necessary, such as disease with chytrid fungus and frogs or malaria with birds in Hawaii. Optimizing biotechnology and where it can meet nature, that's the major role of de-extinction and bringing back levels of biodiversity where it can come. And where it all started, I'll leave you with this, and I'll be talking about the secrets that come out of this on Friday. This itty-bitty little weird, and I'll look through it, slide. It looks like a microscope slide. It's got a couple empty spaces in it. Inside of those empty spaces are 300 million DNA sequences from the passenger pigeons from the Royal Ontario Museum, and this is what made the information for bringing back passenger pigeons. And as Mark said, it doesn't take very much, a few toe pads and a few hours in the lab, and then it's all left on this, and after this, it's all digital. It's in a very digital world now, and the idea is bringing that information from that dried toe pad to that sequence into living cells, into a breathing bird, so that people can see the beauty of something that hasn't been seen in a very long time. And that's what I'll be talking about on Friday, and everything that we've talked about and mentioned here today. We got a little bit more time to talk about that, and I really hope everybody can show up.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ben. We can't wait to see you Friday. Thanks, Mark.
Yep. Dave.
Everybody out there, thanks a lot. We'll see you Friday night. And from us, what's the next Google Hangout, Ryan?
October 8th, talking of Africa.
October 8th, we're talking about Of Africa with Sylvia, one of our curators here in the world culture side of things. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Dave.